Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Raising Confident Girls. I am Melissa Jones, your host and the founder of Girls Positivity Club. And for those of you who didn't know this, if you are a new listener, I was actually a classroom teacher for 23 years to be exact. And I know this topic so well from the parent perspective, because I am a mom, and also the teacher perspective and the kid perspective, because I know how kids all respond to homework. And this episode is dedicated to how to support your daughter's homework habits without power struggles. Let me first say that I'm not saying it's going to go perfectly. And I believe that there are times where homework ebbs and flows. Like they're going to have hardly any homework, especially at the beginning of the school year when they're doing get to know you things, and they tend to have a lighter load. And then all of a sudden, it's like a tsunami of everything being due all at the same time. And it's usually when you really don't have time to sit down with your daughter or the girls in your life, or they are so stressed out and overwhelmed that you don't know how to help them, or they are really on top of everything and they put a lot of pressure on themselves, and you know that they're going to get it all done, but for whatever reason, they have some type of a meltdown, or maybe they avoid it altogether and you don't find out that they even have homework until they have all these missing assignments. So there are so many different scenarios with homework, and I would love to support you in helping your daughter through it and helping yourself through it. So sometimes homework, just hearing the word, can make parents and caregivers just tense up, because maybe your daughter or the girls in your life drag their feet. Maybe they have meltdowns, like I mentioned. Maybe school's hard for them and they don't feel like they can do it. They say all the time, this is too hard. I can't do this. Or maybe you have a high achiever who is good at homework and you don't really have to check in a lot, but you feel kind of like you should be. That's probably the ideal situation. But a lot of times those girls that are high achievers, they can obsess about different assignments. And yes, that obsession can be healthy in some ways, but you want to be able to check in with them to see how they're doing mentally with handling all the homework loads, especially as they're getting older. And so as parents and caregivers, we want to make sure that we are supporting them. But sometimes, I don't know if you're like me, but homework battles can turn into a family fight. It can turn into a slam door. It can turn into a lot of different things. Maybe crying, maybe late nights, early mornings, all the in between. Could be homework in the car, like whatever that looks like for you. So today I'm going to be sharing 5 ways to create some structure around schoolwork while protecting her sense of self, your peace. And my hope is that you'll walk away with at least one practical tool. That's always my intention of this podcast, is that you'll walk away with one thing that you can use in your daily life with the girls in your life, with your daughter, whoever the girl in her life is. And I want you to try these things and see what works for you, because every girl is different. Every family dynamic is different, whether you're a single mom, you co-parent, you maybe your spouse works an opposite shift, and so you feel like a single parent. Maybe you tag team it really well, and maybe you're the parent who gets in later and you're checking in with how things have gone. And there's a lot of different ways to see it. So we want to help the girls build lasting confidence and not just get through the assignment, even though, let's face it, there are times when you're just going to want to get through the assignment, because there are just some assignments that are like that. So before we get too deep into the episode, I want to remind you of a couple things. One is there is a tip sheet that goes with every podcast. So if you are not part of our email community, please join. And so what you can do is go to the website, and there will be a pop-up that says join the newsletter. So that is one way that you can make sure that you're checked into that. And we don't send too many emails, as far as like, we're going to be adding one that's only tips to support you. But this one is all about the podcast. And there's a download. It's a free download that is in every email with all the tips that are on every podcast episode. So that is something that is a gift from me to you, because I know that I drive a lot when I listen to podcasts. I'm doing housework. I'm on a walk. I'm not sitting with a notebook taking notes. And this all came from a parent who told me that one time she was driving, and there was a tip that I shared and she wanted to remember it. So she was voice noting herself, or at a stoplight, she was typing it in her notes app. And I was like, well, how can I make this easier? Because I know for myself too, like I said, no one's taking notes necessarily for every podcast. If you are, that is like amazing that you're doing that. But I know for me, podcasting, listening to podcasts is a way that I multitask, and I feel like I'm doing something productive while I'm doing something productive, like driving, or like I said, all the other things. So that is one thing. And then the other is to share this show and episode with anyone that you think it would help. So those are two things. If you're already on the email list, make sure that it is not going to your spam, because these tips I think are really useful. And it also is a reminder that our podcast comes out every Tuesday. So going back to homework, that is your homework. If I'm just thinking of playing on the homework thing, that is your homework, to make sure that you're getting those emails and to send this to another parent or caregiver that it can help. So yeah, homework is the gamut of everything. So for me growing up, I was the kind of kid who, yes, I know this was in the 90s when I grew up, but I was the kind of kid who I could not have the TV on in the background. So my mom, anytime I was like, Mom, I promise I'll focus on my homework. And that never worked for me. Every time I would be so distracted. I'm still like that to this day. But I have to have music on or something that is, it helps me focus. So my mom knew that if the TV was on, this was not going to be the best environment for me. And I knew about myself certain things as I started, getting older and developing in my homework habits. And so I want you to think about yourself as a homework doer back in the day. And then I also want you to think that your daughter can be different than you. So sometimes what we think is that, well, I always did my homework right when I got home from school, and then it was done. It was checked off the list, blah, blah, blah. Not every girl can do that. So what worked for you? Yes, you can suggest those things, but it may not work for your daughter. School's different today. Like, even being a former teacher, going through school myself, all the way through a master's program, school's always evolving, and each person handles school differently. So I just want you to keep in mind as we go through these tips that what worked for you may not work for your daughter. And yes, of course, you can always offer up those ideas to help her. But what I want you to do is really check in with her about what she needs, and then also think about what works best for your family. So the first thing is, we're going to tip number 1, to validate the struggle. So if you have a daughter who struggles with homework, that is number one, we talk about validating a lot. And again, that doesn't mean that we are not giving them a tool, not giving them a tip or an idea or things like that, but just saying, especially if you notice that they're struggling, that you know that it's hard. Like sometimes they will stare at the same math problem for 30 minutes and you're like, let's just skip it and move on. Let's go into another problem, but they're stuck. That is something that is very common. I know I've had that in my house where it's like they're doing fine and then all of a sudden they get stuck on one problem. And for whatever reason, they cannot move past that problem until they figure it out. Even though you suggest lots of different things, you try to work through it with them, the way you're teaching them isn't the way that they were taught. And so then they get frustrated. Then you're Googling, like I've done all these things, even being an actual teacher. There are ways that a certain concept has been taught that isn't the way that I've taught it or isn't the way that I learned it or anything like that. And so then we feel kind of out of touch, and then they get even more frustrated because we're not teaching it the way that they learned it, which is confusing them more. And it turns into this big spiral of struggle. And so in the moment, it's saying, I know this is hard. I know this is hard. I know that it feels hard. And what they tend to think is something's wrong with me. Something is wrong with me. I'm not understanding this. And they get this panic. And I used to hear this in the classroom. So I did teach advanced math in some parts of my career, and which is so funny because math was always my hardest subject. So I would hear those kids who were in advanced math, if they had any struggle, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at math. I am not, I don't know what I'm doing. Like they would panic because they were so used to being good at something that when they were actually learning or actually having to get through a struggle in something, they automatically turned it back on themselves to say, I'm not smart. I'm not good at this. And so all of that negative talk starts rolling in. And what we need to say to them is, I know this is tough right now. And what I would always remind, especially if you have a high achieving girl, them of is, I would say, how many times have you done this concept before? And most of the time, it was only their first attempt at it. And they were expecting themselves to master it already. So it's reminding them of you're just learning this. It's okay. It's normal to struggle through this type of a problem. It's okay that this is hard. Let's just get started together. And again, if you are not understanding the way that they learned how to do it or whatever it is, just acknowledging that they try and they attempt it, and then they make a little note to talk to the teacher about it the next day. I cannot tell you how many times I saw papers that were all wrinkled up, had holes in them, had erased marks all over, where I got notes from parents that were like, you can see that we struggled through this problem. Is there any way you could talk her through it this morning? And I never said no. I never gave a student a 0 for not doing it. Like, I think sometimes they think that if they don't get it all perfectly correct, or if they have to skip a problem or something like that, that there's a shame in going to the teacher and saying that they couldn't do it on their own. They didn't remember how to do it. They were confused, all those things. And I know all teachers are different, but I know so many teachers, and there are very few who would say, too bad, so sad. Suck it up. Yes, of course, there are going to be those ones, but there's always going to be someone they can go to get help. And being proactive about it and putting a bookmark in it or a sticky note, like not literally a bookmark, but like bookmarking it to come back to later when they're more fresh, or being like, honey, I don't know how to do this either. We've tried everything we can. Let's make a note to ask your teacher about it tomorrow. If they're older, let's send your teacher an email. Let's get ahead of this. Be proactive instead of avoiding it like a lot of kids do. Let's send your teacher an email and say, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I tried the homework. On number 4, I really got stuck. I only remembered the first 2 steps. Can I please come in early tomorrow and you help talk me through it? Or can you please give me an example again? And even as a teacher, there are times, not always, but there are times when we're checking our email, especially from our students. And if they'll ask us a question, we can jot back to them in that moment. So even if she asks a question in the email, the teacher might respond and be able to give help right there on the spot. So being proactive and not hiding from the help, I think that's such a big important thing that we can do for girls, especially, is teach them that there's no shame in asking for help and that it's okay if they don't get it perfectly on the first try. That's called learning. And you're not supposed to do everything perfectly the very first time. Or even if she has done it for a little while and it's just not clicking, she may just need it to be explained to her in a different way. And so keeping the teacher in the loop about that is really important. And also different voices explaining it sometimes can be a good thing. Sometimes it can be confusing. So asking her, how can I support you? I know this is hard. I'm frustrated too. How can I support you? What do you need? And seeing what she says. When they're younger, what you can do is like ages 6 to 9, you can break work up into 10-minute chunks. So let's say that this one assignment is getting really hard. Let's say, okay, let's try this for another 5 or 10 minutes. Let's set the timer. Let's take a break. Let's go outside. Let's go for a walk. Let's go get a snack. Let's take a mental break, because I'm sure that when you're doing a hard task and you don't take any breaks, it's like you get lost in this tunnel. And so sometimes you just need to step away from it and come back to it with fresh eyes. When they're getting a little bit older, they can set the timer themselves. Maybe they can work for a little bit longer of a period, 20 minutes, then get up and get a break. Unless they're in a zone, and you can at least offer to them, how do you feel? Are you in a zone and you want to keep going, or do you want to take a quick break? Sometimes they don't want to break their concentration. And I think for me, I know I've been like this. I'm sure you have too, where you finally get in a groove. And then if you have to stop, if there's an interruption or you decide to take a break, it can take you longer to get back into that rhythm. So just checking in with them about it. And when they're getting older, that 14 to 18-year-old age, it's helping them prioritize what's due tomorrow versus what's due later. Because especially, again, if you have a high achieving daughter, she will typically want to work on a lot of things along the way rather than waiting until the end. Now, if you have a daughter who tends to procrastinate, it's figuring out, like, why is she procrastinating? Is it hard? Is it just that she hates doing homework and she just avoids it? Is it that she has a lot of activities after school and it's hard to fit everything in, and then she ends up staying up really late? So when they're getting older, it's also teaching them, like, okay, what is the priority right now? What do you need to focus on? And I also think it's really important to get their momentum started. So my dad used to say, let's do something easy to get started. So starting with something that can help them feel successful right away, and like ticking something off a box really helps. So then you're like, okay, I'm starting to get in the groove. I'm not saying you necessarily have to pick the hardest thing and do that last, but sometimes when you're knocking out the things that are priority, or you're doing the easy things first just to get them in that homework rhythm, then they're going into it with a little bit more confidence, and then they can approach that, whatever assignment it is. And then maybe that one you can break up into different chunks. So when you tell them, yes, I see this is hard, I know this feels hard, it takes the sting out of it. And if they're avoiding even doing homework, let's say you have a homework routine and they're avoiding doing it, you can say something like, is it because you have a lot to do? Does it feel hard what you have to do? What is it that's making you want to stall and getting started? And validating, like, yeah, that does feel hard. Or, yeah, I do know that you've had a lot going on. You're tired. Let's figure this out. And so what she's learning is that hard doesn't mean impossible, and that there are different ways around it. And I believe that, yes, you should have some type of a routine, but there can also be flexibility in that depending on how she's feeling that day. And I'm not saying that you have to just be like, oh, how do you feel today? What feels good for you for this, and that? Yes and no. um, Having some kind of a structure where she's not avoiding homework is good. And also being responsive to how she's feeling on a certain day. If she's super tired and it's 9 o'clock at night, doing a super difficult task is not the right move. Maybe my dad always told me this: go to bed and get up early. Now, you may say, well, she doesn't like to get up early either. Give her the choice. Do you want to do a couple of these problems now when you're tired? Or do you want to go ahead and go to bed and then get up early and we start it fresh? Anytime I did that all the way through college, I approached it in such a different way. My dad would come into my bedroom at night and he would see me like writing a paper, doing something else, and it being like late into the night because he was a night owl. So he was up a lot. And he would always say that to me: just go to bed. Go to bed. I know you're studying. I know you're this or that. Go to bed, get up early. Try it in the morning. And it always worked because I was fresh. Yes, it was still top of mind, but I felt so much more rested, so much more clear headed. My brain had had time to reset overnight. So I'm not saying they have to get up at 5 a.m, but maybe getting up a little bit earlier and approaching that one thing would be one way that you could do it. Tip number 2 is separate their worth from their performance. So a lot of parents think that it's encouraging when they say, you're so smart. And that is a good thing to say to your daughter. So it's not that I think that that's a bad thing. Sometimes it can make them feel like they have to be smart all the time. And I think, again, you should always build up your daughters and tell them, because they are smart. They have all kinds of ways of being smart. And sometimes, though, high achievers or perfectionists tend to feel like they have to be perfect, or feel like that they failed if they don't get 100% on something. Or if they miss one question, they feel like a failure. So what we want to do is, again, like the example before, help them see that struggle is part of learning. Everything isn't always supposed to be a breeze, and it's okay if you're not good at something sometime along the way. Because especially if school is easy for them, or maybe they do have to work hard. I always had to work hard at school, but I was good at school. So there were times also I avoided doing things. I procrastinated. I didn't want to do a certain thing because it felt really hard. So yes, of course, we can tell them they're smart because they are, but I think emphasizing more of the straight A's and the perfect performance can be dangerous, in that when they do miss more because maybe they're in a more challenging class, maybe they're actually being challenged for the first time, it can feel like a failure, even at a high level. So I work with a girl who, if she doesn't get 98% or higher, feels like she failed the whole thing. So her mom never told her that she had to do that, but she's always known that she's been good at school and she's smart and things like that. And so sometimes they can internalize that and they can put all the pressure on themselves. And of course, we want our daughters to do well in school. We want the girls in our lives to do well in school so that they get a good education, all of those things, but also celebrating effort. I talk about this all the time with the girls and on the podcast and in our community. It's like praising effort over perfect performance is so important too. And so it's saying things like, I'm proud of how hard you worked on that. I love how you stuck with that, even when it got tricky, even when it got hard. It's saying things like that in addition to, you're so smart. You did so great on that. Of course, we should compliment our girls. Also, making sure that we're recognizing when things are hard and they keep going and they have that effort through the process. So, praising the process, not only the outcome. Yes, we can praise the outcome, but not only the outcome, doing both. So when they're younger, you have to think about like, what type of praise does your daughter like, or the girls in your life like? Do they like things to be visual? So at that younger age, they might like a sticker chart. They might like a public display of their performance, a paper on the fridge. They might like a big to do about it. So figuring out what it is that would be a good way to celebrate them, and also doing it for effort. So not only the A's, not only whatever it is, making sure that we're also praising that effort. When they're getting older, ages 10 to 13, it's teaching them to be reflective and saying things like, what strategy helped you most today? As they are learning, they're going to learn what works for them, what doesn't work. For some kids, flashcards work great. For others, they don't work great. They need more of an interactive way of doing something, whatever the case would be. And so it's, once you work through homework time, it's even saying to them, what helped you today? How can we do more of that? How can I support you in that? And then as they're getting older, again, you can have conversations about study habits, not just grades. Like, what do you need from me? How can we support you in your study habits? Having a way for them to talk about it or figure it out, and asking if they want your help or advice. So that's very powerful. If they're like, I'm stuck, I don't even know how to approach this project, it's so huge, and they may not know how to approach it, and then they may want your advice. So you could say, do you want some help? Do you want some tips? Do you want some advice, or do you want to figure it out on your own? Do you want to help plan it out? I can help you think through the timeline and blah, blah, blah. Or do you want to do it yourself? So it's giving them that option and helping them be reflective about what helps me and what doesn't help me. And so what this does is it shifts and teaches her that her value isn't about being perfect. It's about how she shows up and how she does things. And so those are the things that are going to be carried with them through adulthood as they approach a project at work, as they are doing whatever they need to do in their zone of genius, as they're getting older, is like, how do I approach, how I'm approaching this now is how I'm going to approach it maybe later in life. Now, I believe that you can also develop skills as you're going along. Like, there are things that I did in high school that I don't do anymore because they don't work for me anymore. And so it's also being flexible and teaching her that this type of method might always serve you well. It might always help you, but it's also okay if it doesn't. Like, if it helped you for this one assignment and then later that changes, great. Just adapt, just figure it out as you go. And I'm here to help you along the way. Tip number 3 is to teach tools for overwhelm. There is going to be a point, whether school is hard for them, they're in the middle, or they're a high achiever, or anywhere in between, there is going to come a point in time where they are overwhelmed by something. And if school is hard for your daughter, you may see the overwhelm more times than not. But I've also seen it in, like I said, the high achieving end, where they get overwhelmed because they want things to be done a certain way. So if your daughter or the girls in your life avoid doing things because they're overwhelmed, that's one way that they might do it. Or they might internalize it and not say that they're feeling overwhelmed or feeling like they can't do it. They may all of a sudden slam the book shut and say, I can't do this. And you thought they were fine, maybe at their kitchen table working, maybe because that's your chosen spot to do homework. And you're like, wait, what just happened? I thought she was doing fine, but she was internalizing over it and she wasn't expressing it. And sometimes, and I know I've said this all the time on the podcast, I've said the wrong thing. I've done the wrong thing as a parent. And there are times when we get frustrated and we might say something like, stop overreacting. Stop being dramatic. It's not that big of a deal. And what that does is it dismisses their feelings. So again, if you say the wrong thing, just say, I'm sorry that I said that. It's not what I meant. What I meant was blah, 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 or however you want to handle that. So when you say you're being so dramatic, you stop overreacting. We're going to get this, whatever it is, especially if they have a huge reaction and you're not expecting them to. It's like, what just happened? What are you doing? And we just want to understand where they're coming from. And so instead you could say something like, okay, I know I didn't handle that in the right way because I've been there. I've said the wrong thing. I've whatever. And then I say, okay, let's take a breath. Let's figure out how to start this together. Like, where should we start? How can I support you? What's one small step you could try first? So this goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning with momentum. What's one thing we could check off? What's one small step we could take? Even if it's writing the problem down. Even if they're frustrated by even the first step, writing the problem down is better than doing nothing. In my family, we say one is better than none. So one small step forward is better than none. If the thing that she's approaching first is her biggest trigger, maybe it's putting it to the side. And again, not avoiding it, but it's putting it to the side and saying, what's one thing we can do first that would help you feel better, that would get you started? And so what you're doing is you're offering strategies. You're not just doing quick fixes. What this is going to do, it's going to teach her how to regulate her emotions while she's doing her homework. Because let's face it, they're in school a long time. Whether they do online school, whether they do homeschool, whether they do any type of school, they're going to have work that they have to do. And so what we're trying to do is instill in them those independent strategies that they can take with them moving forward. Whether they go into higher education or not, there's going to be, even if they don't, there are going to be times where they have to apply this even to jobs, like figuring out how to solve problems, how to work through overwhelm, how to get through tasks that maybe aren't ideal. And so we are planting those seeds while they're growing up so that we can help them manage it and have the things that get them through it best in the moment that you're in right now with her. So for some girls, it's color coding. It's doing an easy, medium, and hard. Maybe easy is green. Maybe you literally write on a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to have a chalkboard. You don't have to have a dry erase board. Maybe you just, on a piece of paper, you say, okay, what do you have to do today that's due tomorrow? You write out the things. All right, let's make a code. Ask her what colors. What color is easy to you? Maybe it's green. Maybe it's pink. Maybe it's purple, whatever it is. Okay, which task do you think would be the easiest? And then you do that. Okay, which one is medium? So not too easy, not too hard, but you could get through it. Okay, what color would that be? Code that. What is your hard? And for me, red is what comes up for hard, but you can say, okay, hard. Let's identify that. And then you prioritize it. And again, asking her, do you want to start with the easy and get some things done, which I think is a great way to build confidence and help them get that momentum to where they can see that they can do things and then the hard thing doesn't seem as hard? Or do they maybe want to try a little bit of the hard, then do some of the easy, then do some of the medium? So just ask them what they want to do and write it out and make it visual so that they can see and help be a part of the decision-making process and feeling like they have control over what they're doing. As they're getting older, you can teach them the first step only method. This is, like I said, just writing the heading, writing your name at the top of the paper, writing out the first problem, opening the doc, opening the book, opening the thing. So what is the first step that we could do to get us started? Okay, what's the next step? So it's chunking it up and just, again, doing those baby step ways and just picking that first step to do first, which then is going to start creating momentum. And then as they're getting older, it's, again, using some kind of a visual. This could be a technology visual where they're using an app. They are using a planner. Some people like a planner, an old school planner that they can lay out and they can plan everything out, even in 2025. Some people like it digital. Some people like to break things up into chunks in a certain way. So whatever it is, helping your daughter identify what helps you keep track of what you have to do. And so it's helping her and asking her also, do you want my help? Do you feel like you need help? What tools do you need? How can I support you in this? And then just seeing what she says. So when she learns how to shrink her overwhelm into manageable steps, baby steps, little steps, then she gains a life skill that she'll carry with her way beyond homework, which is when I have a big project, what's the first thing I do? How can I get started? How can I keep going? If I get stuck, how can I get help? And just normalizing that, because that is a lifelong skill, no matter what. In every area of your life, you're going to at some point be overwhelmed by something. So figuring out how to manage it best for her and how to try different things is going to serve her well in the long run. And then tip number 4 is to create that supportive environment. So if you've said things like, just sit at the table and do it because that worked for you, or go up into your room and do it because that worked for you, only to find her distracted later and unfocused because maybe in her room, she has all of her things that she can do. And maybe you walk in and you think she's been up there for an hour doing homework and she's really been sketching in her art book, or she's really been reading a book, which isn't bad that she's reading, but it has nothing to do with anything she's supposed to be doing for her homework. Or maybe she's playing a video game, or maybe she's playing with the dog, or she's asleep. Whatever it is, you have to think about, where is the best environment for my daughter? And is it the same every day? So for some people, they have to go to the same spot every day. For some girls, they have to go to the same table, have the same environment every single day, because that creates consistency and routine, and they love that. For others, they need to switch it up depending on the day. For others, they have to have background noise. Like some girls need to have some kind of background noise because silence is distracting. Others need complete silence. If that's even possible in your home. And so it's thinking through, like, what is the best environment and where would that be? And how can I help that happen as much as possible for her? And how can she take ownership in it as well? So you have to consider her learning style and also your schedule. So I have lots of girls actually, who do some of their homework in the car. And some people have a very hard time with that. So this girl in particular that I'm thinking of is a very high level soccer player. She has a lot of practices. And so for her doing her math homework, because math is a strength area, her doing it with a clipboard or a book as her desk in the car was ideal for them, because she really didn't have much downtime in between school and practice, because she had an earlier in the evening practice. And so that is something that she would do, is she would take it with her and she would do problems on the way, because she didn't get motion sickness in the car. She knew how to focus and, as the kids say, lock in when they were driving. And so her mom just knew that that worked for them. Now, is she taking a big presentation in the car? No, that's not happening. But I know for my teenager, there have been essays written while I've been driving. And then we talk through the different paragraphs. That's happened before. Now, is that an all the time thing? No, but that definitely has happened and it worked on that day. So you just have to think about what is going to work for you on that day and how can you support them in that? And if it's not working, just to try something different. So asking her, where do you focus best? The kitchen or in your room? The homework table or here? Do you need to do this today? Do you want music or no music while you work? For me, having headphones in and listening to music is such a great way for me to focus, because what I tend to do is play the same soundtrack over and over. And then that soundtrack is playing in the background, and that becomes a trigger for my brain that when I hear that song, that's a time to focus. And my soundtracks can change, but sometimes they just want music playing in the background. For some kids, music is distracting and they cannot concentrate when there's any music. So thinking, what do you need? What is the best environment that I can create for you? Maybe a sibling. I experienced this when I worked with a girl one-on-one and I went to her house to tutor her. When her brother walked in the door, this was a nightmare experience for her as far as focus goes. The minute that he got home, she was immediately distracted. So our goal was to get our tutoring done and our homework done before he got off the bus, because he was older and in that district, he got out of school 2 hours after she did. So she was able to come home, have a snack, have some downtime, and then I would show up. We could get that tutoring done. And then by the time he walked in, it was done. Now, if something took a little bit longer and our session had to extend and he walked in the door, she was a little bit more distracted. Now, because I was working with her one-on-one, I could keep her focused, but I did notice a huge shift in her. So for her, doing it before was better. I also had a partner teacher where his son was the type of kid who could just come in and do homework right away and get it done. He was able to do a full day of school and then come in and do homework right away. And that worked for them because then it was done and over with. And then he played the rest of the night. But for other people, that doesn't work. They need downtime first. Some kids, they need to have downtime before they can even think about homework. So it's just thinking about where your daughter lies in that kind of a spectrum. And ages 6 to 9, it could be a quiet corner with supplies ready, if that works for your daughter. It could be, as they're getting older, music or no music experiment, like seeing what works for them and then checking how it affected the focus. TV or no TV. I'm a no TV, but I know that some people can have it playing in the background. It doesn't distract them at all. So just deciding on what that is for your daughter and for your home environment. And then I also think time of day matters. So if you have a kid who's super involved with after school activities, right away after school may not work for you. It may have to be after dinner. It may have to be a different time. So figuring out what is best for you, and maybe it's the morning. Maybe again, like I was mentioning with my dad, maybe they're so exhausted from all their activities, they go to bed earlier and then they get up early and do homework. Maybe that works for you. So whatever that is, figuring it out and testing it in different ways to see what works and what doesn't. And then as they're getting older into that teen age, it's having boundaries around their phone during study time. It's just having boundaries in general, I think at any age, but especially with their phones as they're getting older, if they're allowed to have a phone, it can be a huge distraction because friends can be texting them in a group chat, or their app notifications can be going off. So maybe it's you keep your phone on vibrate, you turn off all your notifications when you're doing homework, you put it in the other room, whatever that would be, thinking about a boundary with their phone, especially if they're allowed to have that, if that's a distraction for them. And same thing with an iPad or another device that is a distraction for them when they do homework, like having a boundary around that. I think at any age is really a good habit to have. And then just thinking about, again, what works for your daughter. And instead of just nagging them, like being like, let's get to it. You got to go to your spot. You need to do this. Teaching her how to notice what helps her focus. Because again, this is going to serve her entire life. And yes, there are going to be days where no matter what you do, you maybe don't have the focus that you did because maybe something's on your mind or whatever. But it's equipping her with as many tools as she can have to be flexible and figure out and asking herself internally, what do I need? How can I get this done? And if it doesn't go perfectly, just being like, okay, that didn't work. Let's try something new, and being flexible in that as well, and being responsive to when things go well, keep doing more of that. When it doesn't, stop doing that and do something different. And then the fifth and final tip is to keep your connection first. So I've done this. Like I said, I've said the things. You can't do anything fun until this is done. And I think we mean well when we say that because we're trying to get it done. A lot of times we say that out of frustration, or homework has to come before anything else. Yes, of course, that would be ideal that they come in, they're so motivated to do their homework right away. Maybe you have that type of a girl, but there is going to come a point where they don't necessarily want to do that, or they may need to do it later at a different time, whatever it is. So the reason that saying things like this can backfire is because it's like torture. It's like homework is the enemy, which, let's face it, does anyone really love to do homework? But sometimes homework can be fun in some ways, but homework becomes the enemy, and then the connection gets lost, and then it's like you against them while they're doing their homework. So if you possibly can, saying things like, let's finish this, and just reframing it. Let's finish your homework so we can do something fun after. Let's finish your homework so that we can go outside. Let's finish your homework so we can get to practice on time. And then you don't have to worry about it the rest of the night. You can have TV time. You can play outside. You can this, you can that. Like, giving them something to look forward to that's positive is a really good idea, because everybody needs to be motivated in some way to get something done besides just getting it done. Like, it's nice to have something to look forward to. And then if you even say, if they're avoiding it and dragging their feet and it's taking forever, you can say, I know you want to relax. Let's get this done so you can feel free. So again, then it's going back to those strategies and figuring out, what can we do to take the first step? What can we do to make this easy? How can we break this up? All those things are going to help her get it done, and it's going to help you keep the connection, because it's like you're on the same team. So thinking about accountability and encouragement at ages 6 to 9, it's like short after homework rituals. So maybe there's a snack after homework. Maybe they have a snack while they're doing it. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you go outside and play catch. Maybe whatever it is, you have some type of a ritual that they can do after they get their homework done that feels enjoyable to them. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a reward. It can just be something they enjoy doing, and they can do it as soon as they're done. At ages 10 to 13, maybe it's planning family downtime after work is done. So maybe it's doing something together as a family. And I know this can be really tricky during the school week because we have busy schedules, but even if it's 5 minutes of something together, then that's better than nothing. And it's thinking through like what you could do together. And I know not every night can be like that, but maybe even it's watching a show together. Maybe it's cooking together. Maybe it's going outside together. Just something simple that's going to help you still keep that connection. Maybe it's reading a book together. I used to love reading with my son at bedtime, and it broke my heart when he got older and that routine went to the wayside. I think you can always read to kids, but as they're in their teen years, like, they start to want that independence and they want to read on their own, or they want to do a different routine before bed. And there's still a check-in, but it can feel different. So I think that anytime you can do something like that too to connect is really important and special. And then as they're getting older, it's respecting that downtime after heavy study days. So maybe they do want to do something that is a brainless thing, and they might want to scroll on their phone. I'm not saying that that's always the best option, but they might want to watch funny videos. They might want to watch a show. They might want to, whatever it is, talk to their friends, FaceTime with their friends. That's something that, whatever you consider is downtime for them, or whatever they consider, they probably need that right after their study session, if it's not too late at night. And hopefully they can still do that even if it is late. So when you know that your relationship is connected, and again, I'm not saying it has to be perfect. There are always things that happen, but I'm a strong believer in repair and coming back together. And even when things don't go well, it's going back and being like, how could we both have handled that better? I was frustrated because of this. And then most of the time they're able to say, yeah, I know, me too. I was frustrated by this problem. I felt like I was being pressured and I didn't know what to do. And so it's coming back together. And they are more likely, if you do these things, even one of these things that you think might help your daughter, they're more willing to engage with you about their homework without the fight if there is some connection there and you're trying to work with them to help them. So I hope that those 5 tips were helpful for you. Homework is always going to be part of their life as they're going through school, but how we respond to the battles really teaches our daughters far more than the assignment themselves. And look, I was never a heavy homework giver, but I do know that as kids get older, especially in that middle school age and to high school age, they can have really heavy homework loads. And it can feel ridiculous, and that can also stir up feelings inside you. Like, how can they expect them to do this after a full school day and this and that? But how we respond to the battles and how we respond to how they do their homework teaches them a lot about how they can handle things in the future. So it's with validation, separating their worth from their grades, giving them those tools for overwhelm, shaping their environment, helping them identify what the best environment is for them, keeping that connection with them, repairing when it needs to happen. If we do those things, even if we just do one of those things, and even if we do none of those things and then we repair and we're like, okay, let's do better. What can we do to, how can I support you? We are raising girls then who know how to face challenges with confidence. They know how to work through hard things, and that teaches them far beyond their homework years. So remember, it's not about making homework easy. Yes, that would be amazing for it to always be easy, but it's really about teaching resilience in a way that protects her sense of self so that she knows that her value isn't tied to every assignment, every homework, every grade, but that she can love herself and be proud of herself for showing up, for trying, and you can help support her on that journey too. So until next time, keep supporting those girls with their homework, keep loving them, keep connecting with them. And I'm here if you need anything at Girls Positivity Club. And until next time, keep raising those confident girls. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.